And now I'd like to welcome up Reverend Louisa Crevel, who will be our first speaker.
Thank you, Reverend Mary. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today we are speaking about the assumption factor. Globally, we all make assumptions about anyone and anything that may be different from ourselves. I grew up in what was then a very Scandinavian Seattle, Washington. And I had an olive complexion, which I still have, and I stood out on the schoolyard. And kids made assumptions about that. And sometimes I laughed, and sometimes I cried. And I would say that mean, ignorant, and then I'd say their name. And I'd say other things too. And I made assumptions. And it starts so young. And it is so rampant in our society. Our biggest fear may be to be ourselves. On that schoolyard, my biggest fear was to be myself, to be who I am. And the reason that may be our biggest fear is because when we're ourselves, we're naked, we're exposed, we're vulnerable, we can get hurt. And when we show up as real, we can get hurt. And that doesn't feel so good. And yet, when we say, F them, not what you're assuming, not what you're thinking, when we say free them, right? When we do that, we free ourselves to stand in our own light, to be ourselves, and we free the person we're speaking with, the person we're communicating with, to be themselves in all aspects of life. And yet all of us put on armor sometimes. And so that's why it's important to free ourselves to be who we are. And that, to me, is one of the first steps of unity in diversity. Because if we show up who we are, to use an overused word, authentically, being real, being vulnerable, we can communicate with other people who are different from us, and different religions, different cultures. Just in this country alone, let alone think about the world as a global shrinking world. And the only way to really change the world is to change ourselves. Because we're the only thing we can change. We have tried to change our spouses, and those of us who have kids, our kids. We have tried to change our siblings, and we can't. We can only change ourselves. And we learn that here in this teaching. And as Patty so beautifully stated in her Science of Mind lesson today, there is another usage of the word assumption. There is a higher intent called the law of assumption. And we learn that here in this teaching at this center. We learn in classes to put on the mind that was in Ernest Holmes. We hear the expression, to put on the mind that was in Christ Jesus. And what does that mean? That means we go to a place of assuming a higher awareness. We buy into a new idea about ourselves, a higher idea about ourselves, about our intentions, about letting ourselves be vulnerable out in life, in the world, and with those who we are most intimate with, our spouses. our kids, our dear friends. And when we do this, when we assume the new idea, we are using this teaching for its highest intent. We're changing ourselves. When I studied Thomas Troward, my first teacher said to me, and to all of the class, she said, write this in the textbook right now. And the words were, and are, quote, divine mind assists me in assuming the consciousness of. Divine mind assists me in assuming the consciousness of. And we fill in the blank: success, health, love. And that's what this teaching is about. It's the mystical marriage of assuming higher awareness coupled with grounded living. So thank you very much. And now I would love to welcome up Reverend Katherine McKinney.
Good morning again, everyone, and thank you for being here. We've been talking about the 4 agreements in the month of February. And to me, the 4 agreements, the main idea in the 4 agreements is the first agreement, to be impeccable in your word. And I think the other 3 are really in support of how we can do that better, including don't make assumptions. Because when we make the wrong assumptions, we are assuming, according to Don Miguel, because he thinks the biggest assumption is that everybody else thinks like I do. And when I do that, I put thoughts on you that you may never have dreamed of having. We make many kinds of assumptions. I know that I do. I have recognized before this moment that I make a lot of assumptions. Some of them are not all bad. I actually believe that my day is going to go well, that my life is going to go well, and I think that's a wonderful assumption to make. But I make lots of others. Just this last week, I walked out of the center, stepped out onto the curb, and walked to my car. I cranked it, backed it up. I looked to see if someone was coming. I backed up, and then I turned around to see the mail truck was there. I didn't hit the mail truck. But that mail truck wasn't there when I walked to my car, so I assumed that nothing would be there when I backed up, and I was wrong. And we make assumptions because what we do is that we're conditioned to fill in the blanks in things that we hear and we see. It's a conditioning. When you and I have a conversation, we actually don't have conversations as if we were writing out a script and there was an editor over us saying, oh, wait, if you say this, then they might misunderstand that. We just talk. And most of the time, we fill in those blanks. We fill them in for each other, and we do quite well, except when we go, oh, what I thought you meant was, and then we spend some time talking about what I thought you meant and what you meant and how we were justified because of our assumptions. But sometimes we get it wrong, and we misunderstand, and it becomes more heated. And in those moments, Don Miguel says that's when we should ask questions, that we could take a step back. Well, what I have been thinking about is that how we tend to see things the way other people see them. And I've been really looking at that in many different ways. There's a lot of interest in that in our culture, especially in the criminal justice world, because very often what we say we see and think isn't necessarily exactly the way it happened. It can be viewed, it can be filmed, and what we think we see is not what's on the film. It's just a part of our human condition because we assume things. Each of us has a different DNA, we have different fingerprints, we have a different viewpoint, and we filter that. So then the catch is, if we don't want to make those negative assumptions, as Reverend Louisa said, that can cause us to fall into some pit of misunderstanding, assuming that people mean and think negative things about us that they're simply not doing, we want to be more reflective and maybe move our own assumptions about ourselves into a higher realm. I have been reading a book, and one of the things it says in this book is about a Buddhist practice of taking 10 minutes of every day and make it quiet so you won't be interrupted, but just making sure that you only think positive thoughts in that period of time. And if you catch yourself squirrel caging about something that's happened, you just banish the thought and think of something positive. I've been practicing it for a while, and it's very interesting. It's actually not as hard to do as you may think, especially if you're quiet, and you start doing that. But it occurs to me, too, in terms of making assumptions, if you assume, take that period of positive thinking, suppose you use affirmations during that time, just the ones that occur to you, and they're positive, and you say them over and over. Divine mind in me assumes the manner of or the action of is one way to do that. That I know that I am met with wonderful happiness and greetings and joy in my interactions. You can make them up for yourself, but you spend 10 minutes. You don't have to race. You don't have to spend all your time doing it. You can pause between. But by doing this, you can move those level of assumptions that we're all are making all the time up a notch, and your day will go well. I invite you to give that a try in your personal practice. Thank you so much. And now I would like to welcome our own Reverend Mary Morgan.
Wow, people come and go so quickly around here. So I was thinking about assumption, and I'm telling you the truth. I do this about probably once a month. So I drive a lot of freeways, and I'm telling you, there isn't a time when I don't go down the freeway and I see a bump up ahead, you know, on the freeway, and I'm like, oh, the poor thing. God sent him onto his higher expression, that poor little dead animal. And then I drive up upon it, and it's a piece of carpet. So I've just blessed a piece of carpet or a tire or someone's shoe. But I've made the assumption it's a dead animal because when you drive a lot of freeways, you see a lot of them. Or how about this? A friend of mine told me that she went on a date with this guy, and it was like their third date. And so he picks her up, and he says, well, where do you want to go for dinner? She's like, well, and she's thinking, now if I pick a really expensive place, he's going to think I'm high maintenance. But if I pick a medium place, there are no medium places around here, and I don't like that food, and I don't want Mexican food, and I don't want this. So he's like, just anywhere. And she's like, well, I don't want fast food. And he's like, well, who said fast food? So now he's thinking in his mind, man, she can't even make up her mind up where to go to eat. This is called high maintenance. And she's thinking, you know what? If he really cared about me, he'd already know where to take me. So you know what? This guy's a chump. What was I thinking? 3 dates, I've wasted my time. You see the assumption, we go on a ride with ourselves, don't we? We take ourselves down these paths that we don't need to go to. The problem with assumptions are we believe they're true, don't we? We believe they're true. Somebody says something, and you assume this to this to this, and now you've just jumped all the way to this conclusion. Well, see, throw him out. He's not a keeper. You know, forget her. She's high maintenance. God bless that poor dead animal that isn't there. You know? And that's what we do. We do that a lot. But we remember in this teaching that energy follows thought, and that there is a universal life force that runs through each and every one of us, and it flows with the energy we're sending out. But if we're sending out an energy of lack and limitation, of less than, or drama, or things that are non-true, it follows that direction. Then we get more of the same and wonder why. We sit and think, why isn't my life working out? I'm putting all these positive affirmations out in the world. Well, where's your belief? What is your heart telling you? So often it's time to check in. Remember, there's 2 states of being. It's love or fear. Love or fear. And everybody goes, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, it's love or fear. Okay, love or fear. But think about fear for a second. Fear is that insidious little voice that says, oh, it's okay if you eat ice cream every night. You know what? Oh, it doesn't, you know what? If you skip your workout routine for a week, it's all right. You know. Oh, you know, you don't need to, don't try for that job. You're just going to be disappointed, right? It's that little voice that tries to talk us into not being our greatness. So the challenge is to look at that voice and say, I know you for exactly what you are. You are a frightened child that's trying to stop me. So we have to make other choices, right? We have to send our thought patterns other way. But there's challenges to that, aren't there? Anybody ever try to like change their lifestyle and all of a sudden you're up against so much resistance, you're like, man, what is going on here? I thought the universe was for me. The way I think of it is, you know when rocket ships take off and they have to burn through that section of the universe before they get out there into the great beyond? Oh, this is perfect, Jim. I'm tying right into the astronomy. But do you know what I'm saying? When the rocket ship has to burn through that stuff and you just got to get through it, that's the deal. Because sometimes when we change, I don't know, your family may call and go, what is up with you? I'm only seeing good things. Oh my God, you're a robot. Or your friends are like, come on, you know, let's talk about that person or whatever. You know, you're talking smack about somebody. And your friends will be like, what's happened to you? But we get to make a choice every day, right? To say, do I want to be in lack or limitation, or do I really, really want to create the things that I want? And when I want to do that, you calm down and you say, what would love do? What would love do in this situation? If I breathe in and I believe, let's take a deep breath in together. We had a nice group breath. Let's do another one. When you breathe in, you don't have much trouble in that second, do you? It's like, what would love do? Remember, we're greater than where we are. What we are is greater than where we are in our lives. And the moment we say that, we go, you know what, that's right. There's a power that's directing me, but it can only direct me to the potential that I'm open to it. So if I'm down here on this lower plane thinking stuff about other people that may not be positive, or even about myself with some negative self-talk, it's not going to get me to that end goal. Remembering that energy follows thought, and it also follows belief. So where we put our intention and our intention is where we wind up living and being. So the trick is to stay in that presence, stay in that love, stay in that trust, stay in that truth, and go from your own heart. And if somebody says something that doesn't make sense to you, say, not my issue. That is not my thinking. Thank you very much. And with that, I will be introducing Reverend Erin. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm assuming you are all perfect, complete, and whole. You know, it's glowing in here. It really is. The bears, too. Well, assumption, we know everything about it. I know now as we talk to one another, we'll be thinking a lot of things, and what we'll be analyzing is our perception of what they are saying to us, and that is what we're assuming. So what is this about? Is this about somebody else, or is it about us? Since everything and everyone is a mirror of who we are, then we are learning how to clarify our own thinking so that we can know again who and what we are as that perfect idea in the mind of God. This is all our spiritual journey. And on this journey, we are constantly not obtaining anything new. There's nothing new about us. It's all there. We're already that perfect idea in the mind of God, but it's getting out of the way all those things that are not true about us, all those things that we have lied to ourselves about and caused limitation. Because we are unlimited, we are boundless. But when we first come into this teaching, we think that that's a dream. We think that I'm perfect, complete, and whole, heaven here on earth. All of this seems like a dream because we've gotten so far away from that. So all of this, the four agreements, it's about more details of how to make that journey back to that consciousness of awareness of the master that we are created to be. We are created for happiness. We are created for joy. We're created for abundance. We're created from all the good, beautiful things here on this heaven on earth. But we have to realize it. We have to self-realize. We have to awaken. We have to awaken that all what we are is all in consciousness. It's all about how we think, how we control our thinking, how we are able to take mastery of our thoughts. When we can take mastery of our thoughts, when we can take mastery of our energy, and we direct it to where it goes, as we assume a higher and higher perception of who we are, we know who we are. We really know who we are, and that's what's so important in life, to always be expressing who we are. That's why we don't make assumptions. Everybody is thinking about things at their perception of what they know, what they think is the truth about you. But it's really what false things in your mind do you have about you that you can't do something. You can achieve all the things that you want to achieve, because there's nobody just like you. You're created special. You're created unique. You can go for the highest dreams. There's nothing stopping you. There's nothing in your way. Absolutely. And the only person you have to convince is yourself. And once you convince yourself, it won't matter what other people say. It won't matter what someone says about you. It will only matter about what you think of yourself. So if we assume not anything, we should never assume anything negative about it. We should just say, "'Tain't so." There's a word of truth in that. I don't know that to be the truth about me, and just go on as if it wasn't. When we can take criticism, whether it's negative or positive, and just react to it the same way and not take it in, we've added a tremendous degree of growth, because we don't give our power away. The minute we assume that somebody thinks negative about us, that somebody thinks we're stupid, or we don't know, or we're not enough, or all that, that's us thinking that about ourselves. That's us letting that go through. Instead, we go to the opposite, and we say to ourselves, I'm created in the image and likeness of God. There's nothing I cannot do. There's nothing I have to be fearful from. And we totally convince ourselves that this is the truth. This is the real truth of who we are, what we are created to be here as the divine reality of God. We are the light of God. We are the energy of God. We are all that we ever thought ourselves to be in the biggest dreams that we could have. And there is a way to do it. And age has nothing to do with it. Nothing has anything to do with it but the power of our own individual mind to be all that we are. We are perfect, complete. We're whole. That perfect idea in the mind of God. We have a special place. We have a place where everyone loves us because we love everyone else. And we see this perfection everywhere. We assume that this is the truth. We act the part we want to become, and soon we will be as we act. So, the 4 agreements are more details, and all these little details, because you be detached, then you be awake and alive and aware and observe and have patience with yourself and expect all the good and let all those really fire you up and get you going, and knowing that you are God in expression, that there's nothing but God, that you are one with this, the perfect idea, you're special, you're unique, and don't forget to tell yourself that all of the time. I love you very much, and this place is glowing. Thank you.